Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 35th episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it had, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. For the final 2000s album I want to discuss for the time being, this pick may have been kind of easy to see coming since it's probably the single most beloved 2000s album I haven't talked about so far for hip hop. Like Cannibal Ox's The Cold Vein, the only reason I didn't choose it earlier is because I started off the channel with LP and Doom, and I didn't want to have them repeat just a few videos after their first appearance. I recently decided for the next group coming up, I'm actually going to do 20 instead of 10 because I was having such a hard time whittling it down to just 10 legendary LPs from the 90s. I really want to knock all these insanely obvious classics out of the way in one group, and obviously it won't be perfect since I've already done albums like Only Built for Cuban Links and The Low End Theory that obviously fit in that category of insanely obvious classics, but they won't be there since I already did them. However, I actually had a bit of foresight when it came to this department because both Wu-Tang and Tribe have other albums that are just as, if not more iconic than the ones I've talked about, so they'll fit right in with the rest of the group. Also, I don't think most people really care about which method I use to pick the albums I'm going to talk about, so while sometimes it may be uneven with groups of 5 or 15 instead of 10, it doesn't really make much of a difference. The only issue with discussing an album this beloved is it can be difficult to find much to say that hasn't been said already. However, considering how beloved and important the next 20 I'm going to do are, it's a problem I'm going to just kind of have to overcome opposed to just not talking about them at all. However, it's still kind of hard to tell how any given person may feel about Doom because it seems like at this point you either love him, became a fan once he passed, or you're one of those dum-dums who embarrasses themselves by genuinely insisting everything Doom says is gibberish. Then anytime someone is asked to name one whack or nonsensical line, they go blank, let alone being able to quote one bad verse. And of course, I'm not saying that you have to like Doom or you can't dislike him, but if your only reasoning is, none of this makes any sense and it's all just total gibberish and people are pretending to understand or like it, no one's going to take you seriously. I gave a lot of background on Doom and his history in KMD in my Victor Vaughn video, which was one of the first ones I did on this channel. So if you're looking to get more information and background on Doom, I definitely recommend checking that one out. For this one, I'm only really going to discuss his involvement with Madlib and how they came together to create one of the most beloved projects in modern music. Through the planning and negotiation skills of Stone's Throw founder Peanut Butter Wolf, the initial spark between Madlib and the supervillain was struck. While Madlib had already been developing a respectable discography through his output as Quasimodo or his work with Jay Dilla, as well as his involvement in legendary West Coast outfit Loot Pack, the success of Madvillainy gave a new life to both legends' careers and helped move Stone's Throw out of the red. Even today, Stone's Throw remains a titan of an underground label, and thanks to Peanut Butter Wolf's vision and persistence, it went from struggling to keep the lights on to becoming a dream label for most underground MCs, producers, and even artists of other genres. I think this is one of those albums where it's so highly rated and beloved, sometimes you'll see people act like if you don't think it's the best thing you've ever heard on first listen, then you're not listening right or don't get it. Honestly, I don't think this is the type of album you're likely to absolutely love the first listen, at least if it's the first ever Doom project you were being introduced to. This album is the type that really grows on you and burrows in your mind, and with how dense and obscure Doom can be, mixed with how detailed and creative Madlib is on the boards, you can still find new things to appreciate after 30 listens. The experience never gets old, partially because of the old school comic book villain duo aesthetic, which is executed flawlessly. These two already had sort of built-in lore that lent itself to Madvillainy, especially Doom, having already developed multiple supervillain personas, as well as garnering an elusive, somewhat difficult reputation. It's clear Doom wasn't going to let just anyone take part in this world. Being his own producer for virtually all his solo material up until that point, he was more than capable of just continuing his supervillain angle all on his own. But thankfully, he saw a potential partner in crime in Madlib, who had already named Doom a dream collaborator. What Madlib adds is a completely different flair from other Doom ventures at the time, like Operation Doomsday, Vaudeville Villain, Food, or Take Me to Your Leader. While all of those projects are absolutely stellar and have their own unique strengths, Madvillainy shares that quality a lot of my all-time favorite albums do. While not as overtly dark in tone as albums like Vaudeville Villain or even Born Like This, there's still this sense of intrigue and mystery that's completely by design. This album went from having a decent cult following to basically becoming the Bible for underground hip hop. All Caps alone has had its beat rapped over by Earl Sweatshirt, Capital Steez, and probably a million others, and that was super early in their careers, way before Madvillainy had gained this status amongst modern hip hop fans. Doom was by no means unheard of. I mean, he had songs with Gorillaz and De La Soul. But there was definitely a period where he was more known as one of those your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. The opening track here is basically a collage of samples decorated by the narrator who gives us some background on the villainous duo. They aren't meeting up for the first time and working their way up the crime ladder here. The album starts off with them being at large, having already started their reign of terror. This introductory track segues into Accordion, which is definitely a top 5 favorite song of all time for me personally, of any genre, no exaggeration. I couldn't begin to count how many times I've listened to this song because, like multiple moments on this LP, it has this mesmerizing quality that I was referencing earlier. There's something about the Daedalus sample that Madlib flips here that's just drenched in character and personality. Paired with one of Doom's most iconic and flawless verses, Accordion Stands is an all-time classic track. While I could just read the entire song when it comes to picking out quality bars, obviously that isn't realistic, so I'll just throw out a couple of my favorite lines. From the jump, Doom leaves no prisoners with living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. That'll be the hour they knock the slick blaster. Dick Dastardly and Muttley with sick laughter, a gunfight, they come to cut the mix master. Another personal favorite is, it's like they know what's about to happen, just keep your eye out like aye captain. Is he still a fly guy clapping if nobody ain't hear it? And can they testify from inner spirit? And living the true gods, giving y'all nothing but the lick like two broads, got more lyrics than the church got ooh lords, and he hold the mic at your attention like two swords. While I have to give Rhinestone Cowboy a shout out because the instrumental and general vibe it creates is closest to accordion in terms of that special feeling it gives me, I wanted to share some lines from a couple other tracks. Obviously, any song on here that Doom touches is going to be littered with quotable and memorable bars, but arguably his most impressive set of schemes comes in the form of Meat Grinder. This song starts off with a killer Zappa sample that's off of Uncle Meat, and then the groovy bass line comes in and just envelops you. Doom proceeds to give us one of his densest opening stanzas, which is tripping off the beat kinda, dripping off the meat grinder, heat nina, pimpin', strippin', soft sweet minor. China was a neat sign of trouble with the script digits, double dip, bubble lipped, subtle list midget. Borderline schizo, sorta fine tits though, pour the wine, hoarder grind, quarter to nine, let's go. I also wanted to share one more small section from another one of my favorite moments on here, Raid. This may have actually been the first song I ever heard off this album or by Doom in general, besides Strange Ways, because both were featured in the Boondocks, along with Guillotine Swords, which is how I first found that song as well. Doom takes a slightly different approach on Raid, rapping, "How Doom hold heat then preach non-violence. Shh, he bout to start the speech, come on, silence. On one starry night I saw the light, heard a voice that sound like Barry White, said sure you're right. Don't let me find out who tried to bite, they better off going to fly a kite in a firefight." It's also probably worth pointing out that my intro outro beat for these videos is actually sampled from this album. I'm not going to say which song it is because I think anyone who knows this album or even listens to it once can probably point it out. So if you can figure out which track I flipped, be sure to leave it in the comments down below. There's a pretty meticulously picked group of features on here, two of which are Doom and Madvillain themselves, just in the form of alter egos, like Quasimodo or Victor Vaughn. But they do bring in a few others to spice up the track list a bit, like MED, Stacy Epps, and Wildchild, who was also a member of Lupac. If you follow this channel, you know I struggle with picking my three favorites, probably because I only discuss albums that I cherish. But if you know and love Madvillainy the way I do, it's arguably one of the hardest, if not the single hardest, to trim down. That being said, I have to stick to the structure I set up, so my three favorite tracks on here would have to be Accordion, All Caps, and Rhinestone Cowboy. But as you could probably see coming, I'm going to try and stuff in as many honorable mentions as I can in the form of America's Most Blunted, Curls, Money Folder, Figaro, Fancy Clown, and Great Day. I know that seems like a lot, and it's definitely more honorable mentions than I normally give, but this masterpiece does have 17 tracks. I also tried to refrain from throwing in tracks I talked about earlier in the video, since I feel like it goes without saying how I feel about them. Thank you for watching my 35th video. This is the last selection for this group of 10, but just like every other decade, I'm gonna circle back to shed a spotlight on the classics I didn't get to this time around. For now on, I'm moving on to 90s classics, and like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm doing 20 albums since I'm gonna cover really iconic, highly regarded albums to kind of form that base for younger, newer hip hop fans who kind of want to learn the basics. I initially started with less, but I found so many other albums that I felt were just as necessary to discuss, so I just expanded the number. So try to think of this next group of 20 as kind of more of a starter pack for anybody who wants to get more into 90s hip hop and doesn't exactly know where to start. Be sure to tune in next time to see what genre defining album I start off the 90s with, as well as like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite moments off this GOAT collaboration are. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.